all rise to the pledge.
Certainly. Mrs. Sloan, Mr. Hohauser, Mr. Baer, Mr. Greenstein, Mrs. Johnson, Mr. McDermott, Mrs. Nadolny. Thank you.
I'll make a motion for the adoption of the agenda, June 10th, 2014. Do I have a second? Mrs. Johnson, all in favor? 7-0. Thank you. And now we will move to student and community comments. I'd like to remind anyone that's speaking to please identify yourself for the record, and that we will be holding to a 3-minute limit. Anyone that would like to speak, you can step right up to the microphone.
I think you have to speak now.
Is someone?
You just say.
Good evening. I'm the real deal. My name is Christina Quattrochi, and I'm coming forward just out of concern. I have an incoming kindergartner next year at Sousa, and during the orientation, it was mentioned that the class size was already above 100 with only 4 sections. So doing the math, that means there's going to be at least 25 students per class in kindergarten. I was just wondering if there was any consideration to change these numbers and perhaps add another section, because I am concerned about the quality of education for my son who's entering kindergarten. Thank you.
We don't typically address, community comments, but I can say that during the enrollment report, we will be discussing the class section issue for the elementary level. So hang in there and stay tuned.
If there are no other community comments at this time, we will move on. I just would like to say it is so nice to see such a lovely, large turnout for our last meeting of the year. And it's been a wonderful year, so thank you to everyone who's helped make it that way in our school district, in our community, and it's nice to see visitors here this evening. And I would just like to now move on to some of the certificates, and I would personally like to read this one. Being a PTA mom myself, I would like to recognize all of the outgoing presidents of our HSAs and PTAs that have helped us in this year and years past. The Board of Education would like to recognize the following co-presidents of the Port Washington School District's home and school associations for their selfless and untiring work in the interests of the children of Port Washington. Lauren Edwards, Karen Sambursky, Vanessa Towell, please forgive me if I say any names wrong, Jennifer Mannion, Christine Schaub, Becky Shamus, Dawn Andrew, Dawn Epp, Lynn Steinberg, and Eleni Safrudis. Thank you for your service to the community of Port Washington. Please come up. We have certificates. We have some more certificates this evening, so we are going to move on to those. Ms. Nadolny?
I always love speaking into the microphone. No, I'm just kidding. I'm actually very honored to talk about dancing classrooms at Salem Elementary. Under Chris Shields and thanks to the Salem HSA, Dancing Classrooms, Transforming Lives One Step at a Time, was piloted at Salem Elementary School this past fall for 10 weeks. Twice a week, learned a variety of ballroom dances, including the merengue, the foxtrot, and swing. On Sunday, April 27th, these students competed in the Color of the Rainbow competition at Sachem High School, hosted by Dancing Classrooms. We are proud to announce that these students took home a silver medal. Congratulations to our Salem Ballroom dancers and to their teachers, Mr. Sutz, Mr. Talbot, and Mrs. Katz, for enthusiastically embracing this new experience and keeping up with their students step by step, literally and figuratively. We would like to welcome the following students up: Christopher Capriello, Shira Freilich, Marcus Gargulo, Clay Gropper, Abby Hurt, Sydney King, Lily Labella, Max Mala, Janaki Mehta, Abigail Mills, Christopher Nielsen, and Jake Reber. Congratulations. Congratulations. If you guys can come up, we need to take your picture. All right, hold on. Max, Lily, Abigail, Christopher, Jake is over here. All right, Marcus, and what's your name, sweetie? There you go.
Mr. McDermott, I believe you have a certificate.
Yes, I do. This is a fantastic award. I'm so excited I get to present this. The Board of Education and District Administration would like to congratulate Schreiber Senior Harry Paul for having earned top honors at the International Science and Engineering Fair, the world's largest international pre-college science competition held in Los Angeles, California. Come on down. Congratulations.
I just wanted to add that we felt very, very privileged today that CBS News came and they did a little piece on Harry, and we really wanted to show it tonight, but we had a little technical difficulty. But I strongly, strongly encourage you to go onto the website for CBS News, and you can see Harry's interview. We are just so thrilled and proud of his accomplishments, and he's just such a fine example of the best that Port Washington has to offer. So congratulations again, Harry. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Mr. Pernick, did you want to add anything? Okay.
I just want to congratulate Harry and his family on an amazing. Today was an amazing day to watch the story be filmed, and it was really an honor to be part of it. And I want to congratulate Harry on just being a wonderful young man. I said to you earlier today, Harry, this couldn't happen to a nicer person, and I really mean that. So congratulations, and I know that you will accomplish amazing things in your life. You've already made us a better place. So look out, world. Here comes Harry.
We'll also make sure that the CBS clip is posted on our website too. So again, make sure that you take a look at that and enjoy. I think we have one more certificate.
We have one more, and this one is to Kyle Kalenda for his volunteerism and support of the Board of, not the board, the Port Washington School District, serving as the student representative for the Board of Education for the 2013 to 14 school year. Thank you, Kyle, for your service to the community of Port Washington.
I just wanted to add for Kyle. Kyle has served in this capacity for us for the last 2 years. He forgot the certificate. And if I have this correct, Kyle, you will be attending Nassau Community College in the fall, studying emergency management. Excellent. So we wish you all the best as well. Congratulations.
Now we'll go to the report of the superintendent.
Thank you very much. I actually have a few more, just some honors that I would like to acknowledge for some of our students. They've been very active and doing very well in a variety of ways. For the Nassau County Olympiad Math Tournament for 4th, 5th, and 6th graders, 58 schools across the island participated with teams. Each of our elementary schools sent a team of the 5 top scoring 4th and 5th graders from their buildings, and Weber sent a team of 6th graders. 6th grader Ashley O'Neill and 5th grader Rajan Parak both scored a perfect 10, and Daily 5th grader Jeffrey Sung scored a 9. Ashley took 1st place, Rajan took 2nd place, and Jeffrey took 5th place. So that's great news. In the New York Math League, under the direction of math teacher Mr. Phil Spatek, Weber students participated in the New York Math League annual contest. This is the 3rd year in a row that the team has placed first on Long Island. 7th grade took 6th place in New York State out of 76 schools and 1st place on Long Island. 8th grade was 10th place in New York State out of 67 schools, and they placed first on Long Island as well. There's more. For the New York State Science Olympiad competition, under the director of the advisors to the Science Olympiad team, Mr. Chris Buckman and Mr. Jack Grandy, the Weber Middle School Science Olympiad team participated in the New York State Science Olympiad competition. For the 14th year in a row, Weber teams ended up in the top 10 in New York State. Schreiber High School was named a school of distinction from the New York State Public High School Athletic Association for all 30 variety of varsity teams being named Scholar Athlete teams. The oldest track meet in the country is our own Port Washington Invitational. It's in its 96th year. Schreiber's boys volleyball team was named Fall 2013 Scholar Athlete Team State Champions by the New York State Public High School Athletic Association. And Port Washington's Ben Rosen claims the Nassau tennis singles crown. Ben is a senior on the Schreiber tennis team, became Coach Pete Travis's first player to win a singles title, and the coach said he savored every moment, saying the sweet taste of victory tasted really good. And I just really offer all of these as an acknowledgement of the many accomplishments that have been achieved by our students throughout the year, academic, athletic. We've been entertained beautifully by our musical and art performances this year. So a year is always filled with challenges, but there are always so many opportunities to celebrate. And so I'm very happy to celebrate all the accomplishments and achievements of all of our students this past year. It's been a wonderful year for that. I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Fennick for a moment to just give the enrollment report, and then once she is finished, I would like to address the class size issue.
Thank you, Dr. Mooney. Enrollment as of June 4th, student enrollment is 5,367 students, 78 students more than what we had last year at the same time. So enrollment continues to increase, and our kindergarten enrollment is now actually over our projected, under our projected enrollment number of 391 by one student. Last year at this same time, we were very close as well. We had a difference of 5 students enrolled at this time. Thank you.
So as many parents are aware, the district administration has been reviewing the class size enrollments very closely throughout the year, and certainly our kindergarten enrollments has given us a much more clear picture of what we will be facing as we head into September. I have had discussions with the Board of Education, and so the administration is recommending at this time 4 additional elementary classroom sections. Sousa, as mentioned before, is truly in need of a 5th kindergarten section. As we've heard throughout the year, the daily current first grade is quite high, exceeding the board class size policy, so administration is recommending another section for 2nd grade for the upcoming school year. At Guggenheim, the 2nd grade going into 3rd grade does require an additional section, and at Manor Haven, I believe it is the 3rd grade into 4th grade, that requires 1st to 2nd, that's what I thought. First, thank you, Mrs. Cohen. 1st to 2nd grade. That is the addition of 4 sections. In terms of funding, the district had received an increase in state aid. During one of the budget subcommittee meetings, that money had been temporarily placed in a facilities code, but we were prepared to have that money transferred should the need for sections arise, and that is the case. We also did receive from some teachers some unanticipated leaves of absences, and so we have been able to find funding from those salaries as well. So I am bringing this, of course, to the Board of Education, and we would like, the administration would like to be able to move forward with preparing those sections for the upcoming school year. So I don't know if there are any questions regarding that.
I think we all feel that the need is obvious and that this is what we'll have to do for the coming school year, so we're all in support.
We are also closely monitoring kindergarten in a couple of other schools, but at what our numbers show right now, we feel the 4 sections are what is necessary. Should something change in the next month or so, then I will certainly bring that to the board's attention. And the board would have to establish those sections, and we would do that on our next board agenda, and we would move forward from there in filling them.
I will now make a motion for the approval of minutes for May 6, 2014, and May 20th, 2014. Do I have a second? Mr. Hohauser, all in favor? 7-0, thank you. And we'll move to the discussion item, the prospective bond proposal. Is that going to be led by the budget chair, or Mrs. Callahan, will you jump in?
Should we have a final student report by our student rep before? I think you have the floor, Kyle.
Thank you, Dr. Moody and Board. Community Awards ceremony honoring designated seniors will be tomorrow night at Schreiber High School at 7 p.m. Incoming freshman orientation will take place on Monday, June 23rd. Next year's freshman class will visit the high school and learn more about its programs and services. Incoming freshman parents meeting will take place on Tuesday, June 24th at the Schreiber Auditorium. As a result of the collaborations between the district and the Schreiber Guidance Department, we are pleased to announce a brand new initiative which will take place this summer. On August 19th, members of Schreiber Counseling Department will be at the school to assist seniors and their parents in filing college applications. A letter and a reminder have been sent home detailing the help sessions and sign-up protocols. Information can also be found on the Schreiber Guidance website under Summer Help. As this will be my last meeting as a student representative, I would like to thank Athletic Director Ms. Joannan, Director of Guidance Mr. Hardy, Grade Administrator Ms. Torres, High School Principal Mr. Pernick, Central Administrator Dr. Westervelt, Ms. Fennick, Ms. Callahan, and Dr. Moody, and the Board of Education. It was a very rewarding task, and it was wonderful working with all of you. I wish you all continued success in the education of the students of this district.
Okay, that was very nice, Kyle. I don't know how this will be, but generally speaking, I think this thought percolated up because we're all living within the tax levy limit. And it is becoming more and more difficult to maintain program and to maintain facilities. The tax levy limit, for those of you who didn't really enjoy my discussion during the budget process, which talked about what the exclusions were and pilots and very unexciting things like that, one of the opportunities a school district has is to take care of facilities with the approval of the community through a vote, and that is outside of the formula of the tax levy limit. So we're allowed to keep our facilities nice. We might not have enough money to pay staff, but we're going to have enough money to take care of facilities. But I know I'm being a little flippant about this, but unfortunately, I feel like the state has put me in that position. But to move on to the importance of potentially having a bond, it began, as I think, because we have our baseball team at Guggenheim. And that when I came to the district 14 years ago and we were planning the construction of the addition at the high school, we had been told by the architect that the baseball field could no longer be at the high school, that physically there was not enough space to do that. We have an active parent group, and based on that, we decided it would be smart. We have a new architect. Let's take a look and see exactly what the measurements are of the field, what is necessary, what could be done, what can't be done. And then that discussion moved to other facilities needs, to science department potential needs, to technology needs. And while much of that is still not known in detail. We certainly know that there is a whole wing at the high school that has old science labs, as well as the middle school. We had a wonderful presentation from Mr. Maloney during the budget process where he spoke about a 7-year plan to move us forward. That is an extremely modest plan. So no one should think that because we have a 7-year plan that everyone is going to have a Chromebook for maybe more than 5 or 6 years from now. That plan called for the purchase of approximately 100 Chromebooks a year or 200 Chromebooks, and you just heard the enrollment report of 5,300 students. So we have many needs, and so at a recent Budget and Facilities Committee meeting, we discussed this even further and put some very rough numbers together relative to some of those needs. And then the next step was, besides talking about these in concept, to talk about what physically can happen, what our limitations are with the state education department, what can an architect do, and in how much time can he do it. So we'd have to discuss timing, we'd have to discuss financing, we'd have to discuss the impact on future budgets. So there are many items that we can talk about, and Mr. Baer, maybe at this point you'd like to add, as the chair of the committee, much of what I have not mentioned yet.
Thank you. As Mary said, we looked at this at the Budget and Facilities meeting, and clearly with state education law allowing for bond payments and financing to be outside of the cap, it is one of the ways that we can drive potential money back in for program. We have a couple big line items in the budget. One of the things that started the discussion, as Mary noted, was we have a list from Jim Restano of in excess of $10 million of ongoing repairs and maintenance projects that the district has. And so we are funding that at the moment in the budget with a transfer to capital line of $750,000. So year over year, we would literally have to do it for the next 13 or 14 years without any new projects to catch up. And so by bonding some of that up front, two things would happen. One, we could clean up a lot of the things sooner, take advantage of the savings that some of those things would have to do with doors, windows, some of the other projects that Jim has on his list, including other parts of the facility and the plant that need fixing. But at the same time, we could recapture at that point a great deal of that $750,000 back into the budget for other expenses. Similar, as Mary said, we have a line item for Ryan or for technology where we've got about $711,000 budgeted, and again there we could capture, bond a great deal of that money for infrastructure. When you read this wonderful state aid handbook guide, it describes what you're allowed to bond and what you're not allowed to bond, and so a lot of the hardware that we're going to do, a lot of the infrastructure, a lot of the wide area network expenses, telephone infrastructure, we could also capture that money and bond that, and again take a great deal of the $700,000 back in the program. By starting, if you will, to vote on this early next year and then initiate as soon as we could after that part of the project, and this is all seat of the pants at the moment, it would take us nearly 3 years, possibly 4 to complete it. During that time, the district would be able to borrow under bond anticipation notes or bands, where at that point we would really be paying only interest and not the principal. And some of the, what would roughly be $1 million in freed up money just off of those two line items would go towards the interest payments. We would come out ahead a little bit. Some of the money would go back in for curriculum. Over a 5-year period, we basically break even on the interest, and shortly thereafter, starting in 2022, and I know that that sounds like a long time out, but if the project starts in 15 and goes for 3 or 4 years, we actually only finish in 2019, possibly even 2020, just depending on how that lays out. In 2022, we recapture $5 million a year in the budget that is now, would be the termination of the bonds for the original construction back in 2001. Our neighbors in Roslyn, just this past May, adopted and passed a $41 million bond for a lot of facilities corrections in that district. They're building a bus garage. They are doing a number of other things. They're building a new gymnasium. They're redoing their fields. They're doing entrances and exits for security and a long list of other things. There's actually quite a nice presentation on the Roslyn website and a video where their business official speaks to how they're financing it. Roslyn is a little bit ahead of us in the sense that they had $13 million in a reserve fund that they're putting towards the $41 million. They also have another $4 million in other reserved funds. So overall, they're able to knock the bond down, or their actual out-of-pocket expense, from 41 into the mid to high 20s. They will pay for that in a similar way, though. They forecast an initial increase in somewhere in the amount of $60 for their residents, and then they have longer-term bonds also coming off their payment schedule. So the net for us is we might have a year or two where we would have to determine how to cover it, and that depends also on what type of bond we could do if we might be, and this is a question of whether we can do interest only for a period of time and then principal. But we certainly come out ahead when the $5 million comes off and can be used to amortize and absorb the principal on whatever bond that we would do. As Mary said, there are a number of facility issues, including, for example, the science labs. There's a whole long list of then being able to improve our technology offering. Our facilities would be up to date. We talked about within 3 or 4 years, the actual turf field as it exists today will need most likely to be replaced. We would then look at turfing a second field, the one that is next to the side of the building on what I guess is the southeast side of Schreiber, where we would then also put the baseball field. We would be able to return girls softball up here as well on the opposite diagonal. We would also gain a full-length lacrosse and soccer field there, as well as putting up screening to protect the building that would be required for all of those sports to be done. But then we would have 2 full-time fields. We would be able to accomplish some other things, putting in bleachers down on the original turf field. There's a long list that we would have to come up with, but that was the initial framework. And again, because the actual payments are outside of the cap, it wouldn't interfere with us there, and we would then be able to leverage the financial situation that we have just based on what's in the budget. I don't see it really as a major, at the moment, impact from a taxpayer point of view, and we would certainly strive to minimize that, but rather to use existing money and reallocate some money in a number of ways that would allow us to enhance the overall program across the district over the next 7, 8, 10 years, and then at least have everybody use what we can now, rather than waiting till 2022 and doing it 3 or 4 years after that. We would only really gain access to it literally 10 or 11 years from now, rather than starting in 2 or 3 years where we could take full advantage of it. 400 kids showing up in kindergarten literally last year, again this year. We seem to be on a continuing trend. We're one of we're in the 7% minority at the moment of school districts on Long Island where enrollment is increasing, and we are tasked with absorbing the expense of having 78 more children in the building without being able to raise our revenue. It gets compounded by the process that the governor is employing at the moment by offering taxpayers within the community a zero increase by refunding to them whatever the increase is. And there is now discussion for next year where we will be charged with trying to reduce the budget by 1.3%. And while I don't think that that will be accomplished, we will again then seriously try to stay within the cap, but at the same time use the money in a different format. And that was what we covered last time. At the next budget meeting on the 16th, we'll try to dig into some of those things a little more in depth. The folks who have those big chunks of money are already looking at what could go into a bond and how we would structure that primarily out of Ryan's technology group and Jim's plant and equipment and facilities, and then we would take it from there.
Thanks, Alan, Mary. I actually just wanted to also make a couple points. The first of which is a lot of it seems like it's going towards like the middle school, high school area, which actually benefits all of the students at one point. So that's, something that should be considered when we're talking about it. But at the same time, one of the reasons why we looked at this is because a group is trying to fundraise for it. And if you look at a price tag of $2 million to put in a field, that's an awful lot of money to fundraise. So this was a way to kind of do it without having to fundraise. Alan did a great job coming up with different things that across the board that we could be looking at, including science, which is in desperate need of revamping, including possibly a swimming pool, including bleachers. I mean, anyone who goes to our football games and are sitting on dirt. I mean, so it is somewhat of an embarrassment to other schools when we don't have a place for parents to sit or lights on our field or anything else like that. So if you go to some of our neighboring districts that have upgraded certain parts of their schools and their fields and everything, it really is just trying to bring us back up into a point of being proud of our district and being able to showcase that. So I do actually, want to make that a point. I'm obviously in support of it, but I want to say that there are so many parents that bring to us all these different things that say, we should look at this, we should look at that, we should look at this. Well, we can't do that unless we find money for it. And it gives us an opportunity to kind of help to maintain programming and staff, and at the same time, really upgrade what we need to upgrade. At least bring us into 2012, 13, maybe even to the year that we actually are in. So just want to make those points.
I think it's important to know we're talking a lot about fields and, then we talk about a swimming pool and bleachers and science labs, and it sounds a lot like a lot of exciting things, and we're at the same time talking about how the state's cutting all our funding, and it might be confusing to some people who haven't been sitting and listening to all of this for all these years. But the greatest thing about this bond would be that we can do all of these things and help move the district forward, and the budget could then be allowed to help not only stay where we are academically with our staffing and curriculum needs, which can't go in a bond, but also allow us to move forward. And if we don't have something to help us, like the bond, there's no other magic solution, and we'll have a budget before us next year that will have to try to stay below the tax cap again and have to cut millions of dollars. So not only won't we have those things that might sound a little glamorous, like bleachers and fields and pools and science labs and all kinds of other things, we will have to cut the staff we have. The class sections that we're adding, we'll have to cut those and many more. We won't be able to bring in new curriculum. We won't be able to bring in new technology. We won't be able to help fix our facilities, let alone make them more modern. We'll be in a very, very bad position. So this is a very necessary thing. It sounds like a lot of extras, but it's a way to put all of this in one package in a way that won't be onerous to our taxpayers and keep our budget at the tax cap levy. So I have to thank Mr. Bear for bringing this to us. He may be too embarrassed to tell everyone, but he drove by the Roslyn sign board right near the budget vote, and suddenly we started getting emails saying, what are they doing? What's this bond? Maybe we should do that. And the next day, he showed up at the budget meeting with this plan. So there are still a lot of things that have to be fleshed out, but I think it sounds so far like something we really need to pursue, and I hope those of you here tonight from the community will really stay involved and be informed and help spread the word for others to understand what's going on here. And Larry?
Yeah, I mean, in concept, it sounds like a great idea. I just have a couple of questions on the logistics of it. I think the state prescribes the terms of length that we can use for specific assets. And for example, I don't think they would allow us to do an interest-free bond. But in other words, if we're buying something that has a useful life, if we're buying computer equipment, I certainly wouldn't want us to be paying that out over 18 years when 3 years down the road we throw them out. So is there any way to structure this thing where we would have different bonds that would cover the different aspects of the job if we were to have things that had different useful lives?
The one conversation that I have had with Mr. Ryan Maloney, sorry. We discussed what was in his budget, the $711,000 for equipment. And if we look at the infrastructure pieces rather than the Chromebook type items that are going to really not have a longer useful life, he believes that we can stay with our plan and do the infrastructure work in advance, and that would allow us to take approximately $250,000 a year out of his budget without going to the small items that, as you say, don't have a longer useful life, and that would be bondable.
Thank you.
Alan, can you just clarify for those in the audience, air conditioning was not part of this bond, correct?
You know I love you guys, right? I'm sorry to burst your bubble. I'll be quick about it, though. I thought you guys turned off my mic, but I did accidentally turn it off with my forearm. But if you could, you would, and you'll see why. You know, I missed that budget and facilities committee meeting. And so, and since you happened to drive by the Roslyn School District the day before and saw that sign and all that happened so quickly, I had no idea this was coming up until someone in the community said, hey, how about that bond project coming up? And I'm like, what bond project? And so then I was informed of what was going on. Also, I cannot make the one that was scheduled at that meeting for next week, and now I feel it's very important for me to be able to make it. So if it's possible to reschedule the Budget and Facilities Committee meeting that's scheduled for next Monday, the 16th, which date I'll be out of town, I'd really like to do that if possible, as one of the 3 people on the Budget Committee. Look, I understand that our back is against the wall in terms of operating expenses versus the amount of revenues we can raise with the laws the way they are now. But I'm totally opposed to raising, long-term bond revenues or bond cash to pay for operating expenses, even though we put it in the capital account. These are basically, general maintenance and repair kind of things that we're spending the money on. So I know we feel like it's going into the capital account. It's really not. And if we want to raise more money to save programs, then we should talk about going over the cap. and don't try to go backdoor it by going and raising a bond to do it, because it's not the right way to do things, in my humble opinion. You know, Roslyn has, they're in a much different position. They raised $41 million, but they go through the math, and you can look at on the Roslyn website about their proposal, and they show that it's going to cost $60 per family on average, the average value of the house. And they talk even over a few years it's going to get less. Well, that's because they have a $9 million fund, fund balances that they're going to be using over time to offset what would be big tax increases. They don't mention that they have a couple of bonds coming off, and they could have reduced everyone's taxes by $500 on average. But they're in a different situation where they can get a lot of great things for $60 per household, one-time increase, essentially, is what they show. It's worth taking a look as we get more into this discussion. Here's the thing for me. Our situation is just so much different because I don't know if you guys remember, but the last budget that we passed, we only are funding $1.3 million with the tax increase, okay? The rest is coming from a 3.9 transfer from the fund balance. So next year we're going to have to come up with a lot of money again out of our fund balances, and this was a gamble this year in anticipation that maybe our cost of the pension cost would be less next year. But again, even if it's a lot less, we still have a lot of money to take out of fund balance to close next year's gap. So look, I'm just saying that it was so short ago where we decided, you know what, we're going to take this leap and we're going to gamble and make an educated guess. I shouldn't say a gamble. It was a reasonable guess. It's probably going to work out to some degree. But we still have a long way to go to dig out of this. And we need to, if we're concerned about losing program, then we should do it through seriously engaging the community on going above the tax cap if we have to. Again, using a bond to pay for operating expenses is really another part of the big issue for me. So with that being said, I think there's more to discuss on this issue. I think we definitely should put the varsity baseball team of the high school back at Schreiber. Yeah, I'm sorry. You're shaking your head, Bill. I'm sorry. Yeah. And there are ways to do that without raising a bond. So on to further discussion. Thanks.
I think, and this is just my opinion, that these are substantially different from what I consider recurring operating expenses. A lot of this bond would be would be used to pay for infrastructure, which is, I think, the more appropriate use for a bond. I'll just harken back to about 15 years ago, maybe not even 15 years ago. Some of these improvements could have been implemented with state contribution if a budget passed back then, but unfortunately that was defeated with a fair amount of hyperbole going back and forth in the community. A lot of these repairs are just necessary, and I will say this: Vern is correct in a good bit of what he says when he's talking about the fact that we've used from fund balance over the years, and that's something that I've talked about for about 5 years now. I think our reserves are too low, and I think that Vern's suggestion about possibly broaching a tax cap was one that was considered, and ultimately the board decided to do it this way. But I think that the bond serves a very useful function. It will improve our facilities, and again, that's the point of a bond issue, and I don't think these are really properly classified as recurring operating expenses. Just my opinion.
The three things that I heard which really worried me was, first, Mary mentioning that part of the reason for us looking at this is because of the situation that we've been put in by the state, regarding the tax levy limit. I don't want to misquote you, but it's just, we are under pressure. Fair to say? That's fair. Okay. And Alan was mentioning that we're going to take this money that we had, about $750,000 that we were going to put into our capital account. But if you look at what the capital account does, it pays for routine maintenance and repairs, which is really supposed to be okay. And Karen mentioned the word a magic solution to this, and it's like this bond feels like a magic solution because we're planning to use it as a tool to alleviate the operating constraints that we have, and that's the way I see it.
I just want to respond to something. I said there is no magic solution, and that this will help us because money that we are always trying to find to put into the budget, and previously, in years past, I think really before this year and last year, we had not been putting money in to things like technology and the facilities, and they were the places we kept cutting and chipping away at because they weren't really operating expenses the way we looked at it previously. They were improvements, and because that's the way we looked at it for so many years, we've fallen so far behind. Our facilities are in disrepair, our fields are in disrepair, our science labs aren't up to date, our technology's in terrible shape, our phone systems are in terrible shape. All of those things aren't really, at this point, operating expenses, they're repairs, but we've been trying to funnel back money into the budget to do repairs. So that's why I think the bond is the solution, because those things don't belong in the budget, but now with the tax cap, there's absolutely no room for them in the budget. And I just want to say again, I don't think there is a magic solution. So that's why I want to say it. But Mary, I have to just interrupt you because Ms. Johnson is waiting. No. I'm going to see to Mary. Okay. Okay, clarify away.
I simply wanted to say that operating expenses are generally recurring expenses. So when you strip off a roof and put a new roof on, that's considered capital. When you tear out a science lab and put in all new cabinetry and gas lines and water lines, that is considered a capital expense. And that's why it also has to go to the state education department to be approved. It's not considered a general repair. If we were patching a roof, that would be a repair. That would be in Jim's general operating fund budget. But what we're looking at is really not a recurring operating expense.
I just want to say that there are, if we're building a new swimming pool, then that's a capital expenditure. But I'm talking about just what we're discussing here, I think, is by having all this the bond proceeds, we can take some of the money and use it to alleviate some of our repair costs. And that's what I'm saying, that these are essentially operating costs, and they're recurring, and we use that money to fix vehicles. You're fixing capital assets, right? So whatever. Well, what is the $750,000 line item used for typically?
This year we have $750,000 in the budget for 3 new roof sections at Schreiber. Last year we had $750,000, and that was for the replacement of the fire alarm system at Weber, the fire alarm system at Schreiber, and electrical work along Campus Drive to do underground electrical work as a result of Hurricane Sandy. And that work is actually going to take place this summer if the board approves those 2 resolutions this evening. So they are intended to be major capital construction projects that do not happen year after year. I think that what Mr. Baer referred to in Jim Ristano's budget is a requirement of the state that there is a 5-year look at all the facilities. Some of the items are designated within that $10 or $11 million as maintenance items, but other items are designated as capital, and what we would be looking at are only the capital items.
Mary, no, Alan, actually, I believe it was you, that you had said the people in charge of those various budgets, the directors, are looking at them to see what would qualify to be in the bond and what dollars would be in the budget, correct? Okay. Nora?
Well, I agree with Karen. It's not a magic bullet, but it sounds like an excellent plan that we really need to move on and to investigate further. And Mary clarified, but I was much more eloquently than I would have been able to. But the items that we've been talking about, to me, don't sound like operating costs. They're really new infrastructure, and it's almost like we have to fix our infrastructure before we can repair it. I mean, we have to rebuild it before it's not a repair anymore. It's gotten to the point where it's not a Band-Aid. It's not even like, you know, rebuilding a wall. It's really redoing and building up and getting us back to where we should be. Also, regarding the cap, even if we were to go over the cap, which I'm not at all saying that we're going to, but that could never address, unless we went to like a ridiculous number, it could never address the issues that we're talking about and that we are all pretty much in agreement with that we need to somehow address. And one of the things I like about this is that we're doing it sooner rather than later, so that everybody who's currently, you know, we're always looking forward towards the kids that are coming up and the students of the future. And if kids are currently in 11th or 12th grade, like, they probably won't get the benefit of this. But the kids that are in school now younger students, you know, elementary students, middle students, school students will be getting the benefit of this. And these things will last if they're done properly. So that's a beautiful thing, that we don't have to wait somehow and like sort of miss this segment of the population. And I just want to say to Vern that if you want to miss the next meeting, it is really okay.
I just also wanted to add something, that one complaint we've had frequently from the community is that as we've cut these things from our budget and we haven't been able to fund them, more and more community members have stepped up privately to try and fundraise for them. And it's becoming old to them because it comes out of their pockets and over and over and over, certain areas of the population. Now it's becoming almost all of the areas of the population, because whatever constituency is just so desperate to see these things done for their children, they're trying to fundraise privately, and we've heard that. And this is a way for us to try and step up as a community and get these things done. And the other thing, I don't want anybody leaving here thinking this is all about a pool. It's going to be a separate option, and if we were able to build a pool, not only if we build it would they come, we would be able to raise revenue from having a pool. So Mr. Bear could lay that all out at another meeting, but he's already figured it out, how it's all going to be a profit. We're going to make all our money back in 2 shakes. So I think you could close out our discussion.
That's okay. With all of these people wanting to do fundraising, and I know there's some people trying to redo the baseball field and stuff, would there be a way to accommodate them within this proposal, or are we basically going to say, don't bother giving us the money, we'll just bond it? Because if somebody's willing to give us $1 million to build a field, I would like to take it even if we are planning on bonding.
I think the feeling would be anyone who wants us to give us $1 million, we would want it. I don't think even in the very generous nature of many people that we were anywhere near $1 million. So the problem would be that the amount of money it would take with that field, that was a whole separate issue, that it wasn't going to be enough. I don't think that people will stop helping. It's just that it shouldn't be that we are fully dependent on that generosity to make things move forward in our school district.
No, I understand. I just don't want to, I don't want to.
Mary, just a couple of questions for clarification. When we do the existing work in the budget as it exists now, the $750,000, are we getting aid on that as we do it, or would we get? I know that on the bond process we would get aid because it all goes up to state ed and everything else, and so I'm just wondering, is there a difference there?
No difference there. We do have to have the drawings approved by state ed for any capital project, fire alarms, the roofs, and so on. And we do get 18.5% back on our expenses. I did want to add, lest anybody walk away and think that next summer they'll have a pool to come swim in, that even if we had a very aggressive plan, which I think is possible if the board decides ultimately that this is what they want to do, we could have a vote in the wintertime. Once you have a vote, and only after you have a vote, can the architect legally start to do drawings, which might then be ready in 6 months' time to go to the State Education Department, say September or October of 2015, and then you'd have a 6-month period probably for approval at SED, which means you're into March of 2016, and then you have to do bids, so you're lucky if you get work to begin in the summer of 2016. Otherwise, you're really moving into 2017. So we do have to plan ahead. It's a very slow process.
So, again, by bringing forward multiple years of the $750,000 capital line, we would also take advantage then of 18.5% of that being returned by the state as state aid. So if we took 10 years of Jim's budget and rolled it into one section of the bond, 18.5% of, let's say, the $7.5 million would be paid for by the state at that point.
Okay, I guess everyone should just stay tuned. We will try to keep everyone fully aware of what's going on. We will try to post our minutes from our budget meetings in a very timely fashion on the website. And the next budget meeting is to be discussed amongst the board members when we get there. Okay, we'll now move to committee reports. Policy and Personnel. Mrs. Johnson.
Well, we had our last Policy and Personnel Committee meeting for this school year. That was yesterday, so if you were there, it was, you know what happened.
I expect I know what happened.
It was actually, we continued to review the Code of Conduct, which has been an ongoing and very worthwhile project that has been, it's an annual project actually, but this year we're doing some different things with it. And we are continuing to review it. I think we're getting close to the point though where we will be taking the next step, and that is circulating it to the administrators and to the teachers. And then it will come back here. It will, it will continue to be evaluated and improved. And we will get to the point where we'll be able to vote on it. So we're actually feeling pretty positive about the progress on that.
Yeah, just a couple other items that we covered at the budget meeting. Also from the Roslyn School District, we received a PowerPoint presentation that had been given to Dr. Mooney about different sources of revenue. And one of the things the Roslyn School District had done is they issued a private label credit card, very similar to the ones we get from Citibank or Chase that has American Airlines logo on it. This one has the Roslyn School District logo on it. And they are, it appears to be that they are benefiting to somewhere in the neighborhood of $300,000 to $350,000 a year of revenue from the small percentage that they are getting for having that private label and having people in the Roslyn community using it just like they would any other credit card, but the school district is getting a benefit. So we're investigating that and trying to find out if we could do something similar. We have a larger town, and if proportionately it worked out, we would then certainly approach something of that magnitude. The other thing that we'll talk about at the next meeting is really having a pilot for the parking spots of 10 or 15 that we now believe are in excess, and trying to market those as of September, and see how that goes. And then that would lead to further discussion about enlarging the parking lot if in fact we're successful in selling those spaces to commuters as ways for them to park for the train.
Can I ask that you will speak amongst yourselves, the Budget Committee, and post the date for the meeting on the website as soon as possible? And curriculum, Larry?
Curriculum, we met a couple of weeks ago, and we discussed the changes and the direction of the Creative Arts Department under the direction of Sherry Suzanne. And it was a very interesting discussion, and we found out there actually is a thought behind it, and there is a concept behind it, and it is being fulfilled. So we are in a lot better shape than we are when Ms. Suzanne started, and we're now this is going beyond curriculum, but now we're looking for a replacement for her. So anyway, that's what we did. Our next meeting is this Friday at 8:30, and basically we're going to be doing a wrap-up and see if we met our goals for the year and what it is we accomplished and didn't accomplish and want to accomplish. And we're not going to be discussing goals for next year because that requires the next committee, but we will be discussing sort of general trends that we might want to be looking at when we discuss it again over the summer. So thank you.
Now move to action items. I'll make a motion for A1 through D28. Do I have a second? Mrs. Johnson. All in favor? Discussion. Sorry.
I just have a quick question. I'm sorry to belabor it. We have a lot of disposal of books that are on the agenda, and I'm just wondering, I mean, the statement is always there in the most cost-effective manner, yet there are charities who would dispose of them, ship them all over the world to places of need. There are other communities, even within 50 or 100 miles, who might not have access to the books that we're disposing of, and I'm just wondering what process we use to potentially reach out to them to come and pick them up. I don't know if that's the most cost-effective manner, but I don't know where they go. I just was wondering if someone could fill that in.
I don't want to say something that I don't know for sure. Generally, we leave that to the discretion of the building. Many of our teachers do know of organizations, perhaps even in the Bronx. We don't have to go overseas, but people very often will say to me, is it all right if we contact such and such? And I say, of course.
Oh, Larry, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak on one item. I can do it either now or after we approve it. Okay.
Call to question. All in favor? 7-0. Thank you, Mr. Greenstein. I believe. Wait. I can't forget this. I have to just thank some people for their very generous donations. And I have to say we have very many on this agenda, and we're very grateful to the J.D. Blumenfeld Memorial Scholarship Fund, the Richard Boyle Memorial Scholarship Fund, the Justin Baxt Memorial Scholarship Fund in memory of Lauren Baxt, the Jan Havasey Scholarship Trust, the Daniel Biro Scholarship Memorial Fund, the Rain Loomy Scholarship Fund, the Peter and Jerry Delana Family Foundation for the Philip Dejana Memorial Scholarship, the Sousa Elementary School HSA, the Salem HSA, the Schreiber High School's Tree Huggers Environmental Club, and Hearts. Thank you very much to all of those organizations and individuals for their generosity. And Mr. Greenstein, I believe you had something.
Yeah, last meeting we honored the retiring teachers, and which had a nice celebration for them. But there's one name on the list now that we did not receive until after our last celebration, and I generally don't speak about specific personnel, and my children are both graduated through Schreiber, and so it's a long time since they've been in Weber. But I would like, as a parent, just to acknowledge that one of my sons did not have a very good time at Weber, and he really would come home in tears more than he wouldn't. And the person who really reached out and gave a helping hand was Bob Joseph. And he invited him into his room during lunch and said, "You'll be safe here." And he really seemed to like the kids who were quirky and different. And there's some great teachers at Weber, but I think he's an unusual person. And he lasted 42 years, which is amazing to me, that anybody can put up with it for that long. Anyway, so I just want to wish him the best and hope that we get to see him at the moving up ceremony. So I know you're not here, but thank you anyway.
Thank you. And now, board policy, we are approving the following policy for first reading, fund balance policy 6105. I believe it's on the website? Yes, it's posted on the website for anyone that wants to review that. The BOE meeting dates, approve item 1 as listed below, approve the proposed Board of Education meeting dates for the 2014-2015 school year. Do I have a second for that? Ms. Johnson, all in favor? 7-0, thank you. That too is on the website. Old business. New business. Mr. Greenstein. Oops.
New business, that's how you shut me down. I'm throwing this out conceptually as a discussion item, and I realize that there's no way we could decide anything about this tonight, but I just wanted to bring it out. And we spent a lot of discussion talking about how to protect our students against violence and all this stuff, which is very important, especially now with more and more violence going on. But I think we actually have more security guards than we have computer techs. And I think the children are much more likely to have their lives affected by a data breach than they are by an act of violence in this community. And so I would like to see us really be a leader here and have a data privacy officer who is in charge of really memorializing and setting up procedures and making sure that there is a reason for every piece of data that we collect and that every piece of data we disseminate, and that there's an educational reason for it and that we're being protected. And I think that that's something that needs to be reported back. It's a very rapidly growing area. I'd like to see us have a committee to help push that point, because I really think that it's the students whose lives are at stake, and they should have a seat at the table in an official way rather than just reaching out to them unofficially. I think that they're the people, and they're probably more up on the technology than we are in a lot of ways. I think that we want to know why it is, I think it's worked very well. We have a nutrition committee which makes recommendations, and I think because of it, our school lunches are a lot better than they would be without their input. This community has a lot of talent, and I think we can use that talent without getting bogged down in minutia, but use that talent in a way to push this forward and really make sure that we know what we're doing and why. And certainly we discussed earlier, our technology department is extremely overstretched, and we don't have a lot of budget money to put into give them more support, and we're asking them to do more and more as this becomes a bigger and bigger issue. So I really think we need to reach out and get more help and understanding and really work on it. And I think we need to be incredibly transparent, because I think the public it's an issue very big with the public now, with the NSA activities and the attempts by the state education to harvest 200 pieces of personal information about every student and potentially market it. So I think we really need to take this issue seriously, and I would propose that we set up a data privacy committee and establish a data privacy officer as a stipend position within the district. So that's it. You can all shoot me down now.
I think that Dr. Mooney would like to talk about this before any of the board members, but I do just have to go on record, and Larry, you know that I feel this way, that especially today when there was yet another horrible school shooting, that the safety of the students, the physical safety of their lives, their very lives on this earth, is just one of the single most important responsibilities that we have. And no, and I just can't not let that go. It's not something for comparison. There's nothing more important. So now I turn to you, Dr. Mooney.
I agree, and I believe district administration does agree that the student data privacy issue is a very serious issue, and it's one that we really do have to look at much more closely. It's something we have to think about more frequently than we really did have to think about in the past. You also said, and it's true, it's really an emerging issue and an emerging field for us, so we do need some time to sort of process and think about what would be the best procedures to put in place. That is not to say that we don't already have procedures in place to take care of these things, to review these things, but we can always make them stronger. And we always know that there are new issues that present themselves very rapidly, so we need to address that. I do have great confidence in our technology department. I believe that our technology director, it's almost part of his responsibility as a first line of defense, and that we are working internally to create a stronger system of checks and balances where district administration would continue to review these kinds of issues, make sure that things are okay. There are certain things that come up too with contracts, and I understand that, we purchase or use certain online systems where we now really must pay closer attention to whether student data could possibly be given to third parties, and so we need to do a better job in those contracts of ensuring that will not happen, and so we are working with our attorneys as well. So I feel that, and there is, the district does have a technology committee, and we also have the board policy committee, because some of the things you're talking about, our starting point might be policy. So those are some existing places to look at. And get a better sense of, really what's happening out there. So that's my view of that request.
Well, I don't want to add to Mr. Maloney's job description, but it seems to me that he's been working on that all along, and from what I've seen, has been on top of it. And I mean, it's the kind of area that keeps, changing, and we're all learning new things. Some of us more than others. I mean, I'm starting from a little bit of a disadvantage because I'm not really a techie, but I think we're all aware of it, and it's certainly, the privacy issue is a huge issue, and I'm very, very supportive and sympathetic to, the concerns about it. But I do think that our technology department, especially now under Mr. Maloney's guidance, has been addressing it, and I believe will continue to do so. As far as a committee, to me that's a different question. Like a committee, if you're talking about analogizing to, say, the nutrition committee, we didn't hire a particular nutritionist to deal with the food service people, but we have a nutrition committee that works in conjunction with them. But we do have a consultant, so I might be misinformed. Oh, I remember that now, that came up. We didn't have it always, though. But anyway, I think that our current, the current technology department under Ryan's leadership is doing this well, doing a good job of this.
Okay, well, I guess we'll continue to look at this and talk about this, and Dr. Mooney will keep us informed. And now we will move to the second opportunity for the community to be heard. Does anybody want to be heard? Okay, thank you. We're adjourned. Everyone, have a good summer. Because they were afraid parents. It was very nice. It's just a teacher. No, but it's a teacher once you're